Sunday started before the alarm. The coffee machine was already humming when I walked into the kitchen. A soft, steady sound, like it had been waiting for me. The mug sat on the counter, white, simple. The small chip near the rim caught the light first. My thumb found it before I looked down. It always did. I didn't think about it. I just held it there for a second longer than needed. The coffee dripped slowly. Dark. Even. No rush. Next to the machine, the church bulletin from last week was still there, folded in half, edges pressed clean. I had left it exactly where I set it 7 days ago. I hadn't thrown it away. I didn't move it now. From the bedroom, a closet door slid open, then the soft pull of hangers shifting. One, then another. The same rhythm as every Sunday. Work shirts pushed slightly to one side, the heavier jackets left untouched. I stood still while the coffee finished brewing. The kitchen light stayed low, not bright enough to feel like morning yet. Through the window, the sky was still gray. A neighbor's porch light was still on across the street. I reached for the mug, not by the handle. My fingers wrapped around the side, just under the rim, careful of the chip, without thinking about it. The heat pressed into my palm. I didn't pull away. The closet door closed. Footsteps moved across the bedroom floor. Even. Unhurried. Routine. I picked up the bulletin with my other hand. The paper felt thinner than it did last week, or maybe softer. I unfolded it. The crease opened without resistance. I smoothed it flat against the counter. Service times lined up in small print. 9 o'clock, 10:45. Volunteer rotation in a grid below. Names typed neatly in each box. Highlighted sections in pale yellow. I scanned down the list. Didn't rush. Didn't pause either. My name appeared once. Then again. 2 different columns. Same time block. I noticed it, didn't react. My eyes moved past it to the next line. I pressed my hand over the center of the page to flatten it again. The paper shifted slightly under my palm. Not completely flat anymore. I didn't fix it. The coffee cooled while I stood there, steam rising slower now. I took a sip. It was still hot. Hot enough to make me pause. I set the mug down next to the paper, not lined up, just close. From the hallway, a drawer opened, then closed. The sound of something being set down on a hard surface. Keys, maybe, or a watch. I didn't turn. The bulletin stayed open in front of me. I looked at the volunteer grid again, followed the lines from left to right, then back again. The same names, the same order, nothing new. I folded it back along the original crease, pressed the edges together with my fingers. The fold didn't sit as sharply this time. One corner slightly off. I noticed it, ran my thumb along the edge to smooth it. It didn't fully align. I let it be. The mug sat where I had left it, a faint ring forming underneath. I didn't wipe it. Footsteps entered the hallway, slower now, closer. They paused just outside the kitchen, then moved again, past the doorway, toward the front of the house. The front door opened, a brief rush of cooler air, then closed. The lock clicked. I didn't look up. I picked up the mug again, this time by the handle. My thumb rested just below the chip, not touching it. I took another sip, set it down a little farther from the paper. The counter held both objects without connecting them. The kitchen stayed quiet. Not empty, just quiet. I stood there for a few seconds longer, then reached for my keys. The bulletin remained on the counter, folded, not as clean as before. I didn't take it with me. The kitchen light stayed dim. It didn't change even as the sky outside shifted a little brighter. A soft gray settled over everything. Not dark, not fully morning. The window above the sink held a faint reflection of the counter behind me. The mug, the folded paper, both slightly off from where they usually sat. I didn't adjust them. The chair at the table was still pulled out. Not far, just enough that it didn't belong to the rest of the room. From last night. I remembered passing it before going to bed, seeing it, choosing not to move it. It stayed that way now, one leg angled slightly outward, the seat turned just enough to break the line of the table. I looked at it as I walked past, didn't stop, didn't reach for it. The floor beneath it showed a faint scrape mark from being moved over and over in the same direction. I stepped around it without thinking. The coffee in my mug had cooled enough to drink without pausing. I took a sip while standing at the counter. Didn't sit. I could have. The other chairs were pushed in, aligned, ready. But I stayed where I was. The phone lay face down next to the sink. Black screen. Still. A faint smudge across the back caught the light from the window. The sink was empty. No dishes from the night before. The sponge sat on the edge of the basin, still damp. The faucet had a small drop forming at the tip. It held there, then fell. A quiet tap against the metal. From somewhere down the street, a car door closed. Then another. Engines starting. People leaving at the same time every Sunday. I leaned slightly against the counter, the edge pressing into my hip. Not uncomfortable, just there. The bulletin remained folded a few inches from the mug, the crease not as sharp as it had been before, one corner lifting slightly on its own. I pressed it down with 2 fingers, not fully, just enough to keep it from opening. Then I pulled my hand back. The paper stayed where I left it. The coffee was almost gone, a thin line left at the bottom of the mug. I tilted it slightly to finish it. The chip touched my lip for a second. I paused, then lowered the mug, set it down a little closer to the sink, not where it had been before. The phone stayed face down. No more movement. No sound. I picked up my keys. The metal brushed lightly against the counter. A small, familiar sound. I held them for a moment without moving, then set them back down, closer to the edge, not in their usual spot. The house held its shape. Walls. Furniture, light, everything in place, nothing missing, nothing added, just not filled. I stood there a few seconds longer, listening without trying to hear anything. The faucet dripped once more. Same interval, same sound. I reached over and turned it tighter. The drop stopped forming. The silence that followed was slightly different. Not louder, just uninterrupted. I picked up the mug again, turned it slowly in my hand. The chip moved from one side to the other. I set it down facing away from me, then stepped back. The chair remained slightly out, the bulletin slightly uneven, the phone still face down. Nothing asked to be fixed. I didn't fix anything. The church lobby was already open when I stepped inside. The doors had been propped earlier, cold air still clinging to the metal handles. Inside, it was warmer. Not fully heated yet, just enough to take the edge off. The coffee urn sat near the folding table, steam rising in thin lines. Paper cups stacked in uneven towers. One stack leaned slightly to the side. I walked over and straightened it. The cups slid together with a soft sound. They had been fine before. I left them a little tighter than necessary. The tablecloth was pulled too far on one corner. I adjusted it, smoothed it flat with both hands. No wrinkles left, then stepped back. The edge hung just below the table in a straight line. Name tags were laid out in alphabetical rows. White cards, black print. Some already turned slightly out of line from people picking them up. I shifted two closer together, lined their edges with the others. The spacing matched again. A woman passed behind me. "Good morning." Her hand brushed lightly against my sleeve. "Morning," I nodded, didn't turn fully. Her steps continued toward the sanctuary doors. Others followed, small groups forming without effort. Hands touching arms, light taps on shoulders, leaning in just enough to hear. I stayed near the table, clipboard already in my hand, the volunteer grid printed clean, names in neat rows, blue ink marks next to most of them. I ran my finger down the list, stopped at one name, already checked. I added another mark next to it, darker this time, then moved on. The pen hovered over the next line. I checked it without looking up. The doors to the sanctuary opened wider. People moved in a steady flow, shoes against carpet, low voices fading as they entered. The coffee urn let out a soft release of steam, a brief hiss, then still again. I reached for a cup, poured halfway. The coffee filled it without spilling. I set it down on the edge of the table. Didn't pick it up. Someone called my name from across the lobby. I turned just enough to see them, raised my hand slightly. A small motion. They smiled. I smiled back. Short. Then looked down again. The clipboard stayed steady in my hand. The list didn't change. Names stayed where they were printed. Check marks stayed where they had been placed. The pen rested against the paper at an angle. I adjusted it, straightened it along the margin. The edge of the paper shifted slightly underneath. I pressed it down with my thumb, flattened it again. The lobby thinned as more people moved inside. The space opened up. Fewer voices, more room between sounds. The clipboard still in my hand, the pen resting across the top. I ran my finger down the list again, slower this time. Each name held in place, nothing missing, nothing added. I reached the bottom of the page, then moved back up to the middle, stopped at a line I had already passed. I looked at it for a second longer than needed, then drew a small mark next to it. Not a full check, just a line. I didn't cross it out. I didn't complete it. The mark stayed halfway done. I lifted the pen. The page remained as it was. I didn't change it. The lobby quieted further. Only a few people left outside. I set the clipboard down on the table, not centered, closer to the edge than before. The pen rolled slightly, then stopped. I didn't move it back. The coffee in the cup had cooled without being touched, a thin layer forming on top. I picked it up, took a small sip, then set it down again, in a different spot. not where it had been. The table held everything in place. Cups, cards, paper, all arranged, all slightly shifted. I stood there for a moment longer, then reached for the clipboard again. The half-marked line was still there, unfinished. I closed the clip over the paper, pressed it flat. The page didn't move. After the service, the doors opened again. Sound returned in small pieces first. Shoes against carpet, programs folding, low voices finding each other. Then it filled the space. The lobby shifted back into motion. People gathered in loose circles near the entrance. Some stayed close to the doors. Others moved toward the coffee table again. Hands reached for cups. Light touches on arms. A pause here, a laugh there. Nothing loud, just enough to carry across the room. I stood near the edge of the table, clipboard in my hand again. The clip pressed tighter now over the paper. The top sheet barely moved. I opened it. The page underneath was the same. Names, lines, check marks. Everything still there. I ran my finger down the list, slower than before, stopping at each line just a second longer. The pen rested between my fingers, not writing yet. I checked off one name, then another, each mark placed carefully. Same angle, same pressure. A woman stepped closer. She said something about next week. I nodded, answered briefly, didn't add anything. She waited a second like there might be more, then moved on. The circle she returned to closed again without me. I looked back down at the paper. One line near the middle remained blank. No mark, no ink, just the printed name. I paused there. The pen lifted slightly, hovered above the space. Didn't touch it. I looked up without meaning to. Across the room, people stood shoulder to shoulder, hands moving as they spoke. A man leaned in closer to someone as they laughed. A hand rested briefly on his arm, then dropped. The space between them closed again. I looked back down. The line was still empty, unchanged. The pen moved closer, stopped just above the paper. I could feel where the mark would go, the exact spot, the same angle as the others. I didn't press down. My hand stayed there for a moment longer, then shifted away. I checked the next name instead, left the blank line as it was. The page filled around it. Marks above, marks below. The space remained. I flipped the corner of the page slightly, not enough to turn it, just enough to feel the edge, then let it fall back. The coffee urn released another soft hiss, steam rising again. A cup tipped slightly on the table. I straightened it, set it back into line with the others. The circle near the door shifted positions. Someone stepped out. Another stepped in. The shape changed, but stayed the same size. I moved a few steps to the side, not into a group, just closer to the wall. The clipboard stayed in my hands, the pen now resting against the clip. I closed it again, pressed the metal down until it clicked. The page flattened, the blank line hidden beneath the clip, still there. I knew where it was. Someone walked past me. Their shoulder brushed mine, light, unintentional. I didn't step back. I didn't step forward, just stayed where I was. The lobby began to thin again. One group left, then another. Voices moved toward the doors, then outside. The space opened. More air between sounds. I walked back to the table, set the clipboard down, this time more toward the center, then adjusted it slightly to the left, not exactly straight. The pen rolled again a small distance before stopping. I didn't move it. I reached for the coffee cup, took a sip. It had cooled, not warm anymore. I swallowed without pausing, set it down near the edge. A faint ring formed underneath. I watched it spread just a little before it stopped. The sanctuary doors closed behind me with a soft pull. The sound inside faded completely. Only the lobby remained, the table, the clipboard, the cup. All still. I opened the clip one more time, lifted the page. The blank line was exactly where I left it, untouched. I ran my finger just beside it, not on the name, just near it. Then lowered the page again, closed the clip. The mark never came. The parking lot was already filling by the time we pulled out. Rows of cars angled toward the building. Minivans, SUVs, a few older sedans parked closer to the back. The exit lane moved slowly, one car at a time, brake lights flickering red in a steady rhythm. We waited. The radio came on without being touched. A voice talking about the weather. Mild for the season, a chance of light wind later in the afternoon. No one changed the station. The volume stayed low, just enough to fill the space between us. I held the bulletin on my lap, still folded, not as tight as it had been that morning, the edges soft now, pressed and released too many times. My fingers moved along the crease, flattening it again. It didn't hold. A corner lifted slightly, then fell back. The line where it folded no longer sharp. I pressed it once more, then stopped. The car ahead rolled forward a few feet. We followed. Stopped again. A shopping cart sat loose near the curb. One wheel turned slightly sideways. It shifted when a car passed too close, then settled against the concrete edge. A woman walked past with 2 bags balanced in one hand. Her other hand held a child's jacket dragging slightly near the ground. She adjusted it without stopping, kept moving. The exit opened just enough for us to move forward again. The tires rolled over a painted line, white against gray, then stopped once more. The radio voice changed, a different tone. Traffic updates now. Road closures in another part of town. Not here. Nothing that affected where we were going. I looked down at the bulletin again, the printed grid faintly visible through the fold. Lines crossing under the surface. Names hidden, but still there. I traced one square with my fingertip, not opening it, just feeling where it would be. The paper shifted slightly under my hand. I held it still. The car moved again, this time farther. The exit lane finally clearing. We turned onto the main road. Traffic steady now, cars spaced evenly, no stopping. The movement smoothed out. The radio stayed on. A song started. Soft at first, familiar but not fully recognized. I didn't turn it up. I didn't turn it off. The sound stayed in the background. The bulletin rested against my knees. I adjusted it once, then let it sit slightly off-center, not aligned with my legs, not straight. I didn't correct it. At the next light, we slowed again. Red. The car came to a stop. I looked out the window. Across the intersection, a grocery store sign stood above the lot. Bright. Cars moving in and out. Carts lined in rows near the entrance. A man pushed one back with one hand while holding his phone in the other. He didn't look up. The cart clicked into place against the others. Then he walked away. The light stayed red. I turned the bulletin slightly in my lap. The edge brushed against my wrist. cool. I pressed the fold again with my thumb. The paper resisted, didn't stay flat. I stopped pressing, left it as it was. The light changed. Green. Cars moved forward. We followed. The road opened into a steady line of movement again. No turns, no stops, just forward. The radio voice returned between songs. Something about the afternoon forecast, clouds clearing later. I didn't listen closely. The words passed through without holding, not pressing, not holding, just there. The house looked the same when we got back. Nothing shifted while we were gone. The driveway held the same line of shade. The front door opened with the same quiet pull. Inside, the air felt still. Not stale, just held in place. I stepped into the kitchen first, set my keys down on the counter. Not where I usually did, a few inches closer to the edge. They made a soft sound against the surface, then settled. The mug was still there, where I left it. The faint rings underneath had dried. 2 circles, not matching. I didn't wipe them. I picked up the mug, turned it slowly in my hand. The chip caught the light again. Same spot. My thumb hovered just below it. Didn't touch it this time. I set the mug down closer to the sink, not aligned with the rings. A third position. The bulletin sat near the edge of the counter, folded, slightly uneven, the corner lifting more now than before. I pressed it once with the side of my hand, not enough to flatten it completely, just enough to keep it from opening. Then I pulled my hand back. The chair at the table was still out. Same angle, same space between it and the table. It hadn't moved. I stood there for a second, looking at it without stepping closer. The rest of the chairs remained pushed in, straight, even, ready. This one sat apart. I walked past it, didn't touch it. The floor underneath still held the same faint marks, lines worn into the wood from being moved in the same direction over time. I stepped around them without thinking. The sink was still empty. The sponge had dried slightly at the edges. The faucet stayed tight. No more drops forming. The quiet in the room felt more complete now. Nothing interrupting it. From the living room, the TV came on. A low hum before the sound settled. Then voices. A program already in progress. No introduction, just mid-sentence. I didn't turn toward it. I stayed in the kitchen. The bulletin shifted slightly closer to the edge of the counter. Not by much, just enough to notice. I slid it back a fraction. Not centered, not aligned, just less close to falling. Then I stopped. The keys remained where I set them, closer to the edge than before. I nudged them once with my fingers. They moved slightly, still not in place. I left them there. The mug sat near the sink, handle turned away, the chip facing the wall. I noticed it, didn't turn it back. The chair behind me remained just slightly out. I could feel the space it created without looking at it again. The TV voices rose and fell in the next room. A laugh track cut through once, then faded. I reached for the cabinet, opened it, took out a plate, set it down on the counter. The sound brief, then gone. I didn't reach for anything else. The plate stayed there, empty. I stood still for a moment, looking at the counter, the mug, the paper, the keys, the plate. Each one in a slightly different place than before. None of them wrong, just not where they usually sat. From the hallway, footsteps passed, moving toward the living room, not slowing, not stopping. I didn't turn. I picked up the mug again, held it without drinking. My fingers wrapped around the side, avoiding the rim, avoiding the chip. I set it back down a few inches away, a new position. The circle it left didn't match the others. 3 rings now, not aligned. I looked at them for a second longer than needed, then stepped back. The chair remained out, the bulletin uneven, the keys near the edge, the mug in its 3rd place. Nothing corrected, nothing returned. The room held all of it without asking for anything to change. Dinner happened without being called dinner. No one said it. No one asked what time. The kitchen light came on a little brighter than before. Not fully bright, just enough to see the counter clearly. I stood at the sink for a moment, hands resting on the edge. Not washing anything. There was nothing there. The plate from earlier still sat where I'd left it, empty. I moved it slightly to the side, not toward the sink, not toward the table, just out of the center. The cabinet door closed softly behind me. I didn't remember opening it again. From the living room, the TV stayed on, voices rising and falling in steady rhythm. A commercial break, music louder for a few seconds, then lower again. I reached for another plate, set it down next to the first one. They didn't line up. One slightly forward, the other a little behind. I didn't fix them. I filled the glass with water, halfway, then another, same level. Placed them on the table. Not across from each other, not side by side, just near where they would be. The chair remained out, same angle. I walked around it again, set one plate down, then the other. The empty chair held its space between them. No one moved it. No one mentioned it. I didn't look at it directly, just past it. Forks rested on the table, not parallel. One turned slightly outward, the other closer to the edge. I sat down, not in my usual place, a different chair, closer to the end of the table. The wood felt cooler there, less worn. From the hallway, footsteps moved into the kitchen, paused, then continued toward the table. A chair pulled back, not the empty one, another, closer to the wall. The legs scraped lightly against the floor, then stopped. We sat. The TV continued in the next room. A laugh track again. Short, then gone. We didn't turn it off. I picked up my fork, touched the edge of the plate. A small sound, then still. I didn't take a bite yet. The empty chair stayed where it was, the space it held unchanged. I could feel it at the edge of the table, a place no one reached toward, no one filled. The food sat between us, served, untouched for a moment longer than usual. Then, movement. Fork against plate. Quiet. Steady. No conversation to follow it. No question. No comment. Just the sound of eating. The TV filled the rest of the room. Words I didn't follow. Scenes I didn't see. I kept my eyes on the table. On the space between the plates. On the chair that remained out. My hand rested near the edge of that space. Not reaching, not pulling away, just there. The glasses stayed half full. No one refilled them. No one emptied them. They stayed where they were placed, slightly off. The chair remained out. No one pulled it in. I finished eating without noticing when it started. The plate sat in front of me. Not empty, not full, just done. I set the fork down, not parallel to the edge, just resting where it fell. The TV voice rose again. Another laugh, then quiet. I didn't look up. My hand moved once across the table, stopped just short of the empty chair, then rested there. He stood first. The chair legs scraped lightly against the floor. A short sound. Then still. He picked up his plate, held it level as he walked to the sink, set it down inside the basin, porcelain against metal, a dull contact. He didn't turn the water on, didn't reach for the sponge. The plate stayed there, centered, dry. He stepped back without looking at it again, moved past the counter, back toward the living room. The TV volume rose slightly as he entered, then settled. I stayed seated, my plate still in front of me, my glass half full. The empty chair to my right, still out, same angle. I didn't look at him when he walked away. I looked at the table, at the space between things. My hand rested near the edge of the empty place, close enough to feel it, not touching it. My fingers moved once, a small shift, then stopped. The wood under my palm felt smooth, cooler near the center, warmer closer to where I sat. I kept my hand there, didn't pull it back, didn't move it forward. From the living room, voices layered over each other. Dialogue, then music, then silence, then another voice. I didn't follow any of it. The sink held one plate, still dry, unchanged. A faint reflection of the overhead light rested on its surface, not moving. I reached for my glass, took a sip. The water slightly warmer now. I swallowed, set it down a little farther away than before. The base left a faint mark on the table. I didn't wipe it. My plate stayed in front of me, not moved. The fork resting where I left it, handle angled outward. I looked at it for a moment, then away. The empty chair remained just slightly out. I could see the gap between it and the table edge. A narrow space, unfilled. I leaned back just a little. The chair I was in didn't make a sound. It held steady, different from the one that had scraped earlier. I noticed that, then let it go. The room stayed in place, nothing shifting, nothing asking to be changed. I stood slowly, picked up my plate, walked to the sink, set it beside the other one. 2 plates now, both dry, side by side, not touching. I didn't turn the water on. My hand hovered over the faucet for a second, then lowered. I stepped back. The counter held the same objects, the mug, the bulletin, the keys, each one in a place I hadn't chosen fully, just placed. The mug sat closer to the sink now, handle turned away, the chip still facing the wall. I noticed it again, didn't turn it. The bulletin remained folded, uneven at the edges, one corner lifting slightly. I pressed it down with 2 fingers. Not fully, just enough to keep it still, then pulled my hand back. From the living room, a laugh track cut through again. Short, then gone. I leaned against the counter, just slightly, the edge pressed into my side. I didn't move away. The sink held the plates, still dry, still waiting. The chair at the table remained out, unmoved from morning to now. I looked at it from where I stood. The angle hadn't changed. The space hadn't closed. I didn't walk toward it. I didn't reach for it. I stayed where I was. My hand rested on the counter, near the bulletin, near the mug, not touching either, just there. The kitchen settled after the plates were left. No running water, no movement in the sink. The 2 plates sat side by side, dry. A thin line of light rested across both of them, unbroken. I stayed near the counter, not leaning anymore, just standing. The bulletin was still there, folded, edges uneven, one side longer than the other. I picked it up. The paper felt softer now, not as firm as it had been that morning. I turned it once in my hands. The crease didn't guide it anymore. It folded where it wanted to, not where it had before. I opened it, slowly. The center line no longer straight. The page didn't lie flat. One side lifted slightly higher. I pressed it down with my palm. I let it sit as it was. The grid inside came back into view. Names, lines, check marks. The ink looked darker against the softened paper. I ran my finger along one column, not stopping, just moving from top to bottom. When I reached the middle, I slowed. There it was, the line I had left, still blank. No mark, no ink, nothing added. The space around it filled in completely. Marks above, marks below. The blank line held its place between them. I touched the edge of the box next to it. Not the name, just the border. My finger rested there for a second, then moved away. I didn't pick up a pen. I didn't look for one. The page stayed open, not fully flat, not folded anymore, just open. I set it down on the counter, not centered, one edge closer to the sink, the other tilted slightly outward. I didn't straighten it. The corner curled upward on its own. I let it. The mug sat nearby, handle turned away, the chip still hidden from where I stood. I reached for it. My hand paused just above the rim, then shifted lower, gripped the side instead, avoiding the edge, avoiding the place my thumb used to go. I lifted it. There was still a small amount of coffee at the bottom, darker now, cooler. I took a sip, didn't pause, didn't react. Set it back down closer to the paper than before, not aligned, just near it. A faint ring formed underneath, overlapping one of the earlier ones. The shapes didn't match. They crossed without lining up. I watched the edge of the ring for a second, then looked away. From the living room, the TV continued. A different scene now, different voices, same volume. I didn't follow it. The sink remained unchanged. 2 plates, dry, still side by side, not touching. I stepped back just a little. The counter held everything in view. The open paper, the mug, the keys, each one slightly out of place. Nothing corrected, nothing returned. I reached for the bulletin again, not to fold it, just to move it. I slid it a few inches to the left, then stopped. It wasn't centered. It wasn't aligned with the edge. It didn't match anything else on the counter. I left it there. My hand rested on top of it for a moment, not pressing, just covering part of the page. Then I lifted it away. The paper stayed open, the blank line still visible, still untouched. I didn't look at it again. Morning came the same way again, before the alarm, before any sound from the rest of the house. The coffee machine started on its own, a low hum filling the kitchen before I stepped into it. The light outside still gray, the window holding a faint reflection of the counter, the paper, the mug, both where I left them, unchanged. The bulletin still open, edges uneven, one corner curled a little more now. I didn't press it down. I didn't fold it back. I left it as it was. The mug sat just beside it, handle turned away, the chip facing the wall. I reached for it. My hand stopped just before the handle, then moved to the side instead. Fingers wrapping around the body of the mug, lower than before, avoiding the rim completely. The heat spread into my palm. I held it there for a second, then lifted it. Steam rose in thin lines, slower than yesterday. I watched it without moving. The lines faded into the air before reaching eye level. I didn't follow them. I took a sip. The edge of the mug didn't touch the same place as before. A slight shift, barely noticeable. I lowered it, set it down closer to the paper than it had been the night before. Not touching, just near. The base left a new ring, this one crossing the others at a different angle. No pattern, no alignment. I didn't wipe it. From the hallway, the closet door opened again. The same sound. Hangers sliding against the rod. Even spacing, even movement. I didn't look up. I stood at the counter, the paper open in front of me, the grid still visible, the blank line still there. I didn't move closer. I didn't reach for it. I let my eyes pass over it without stopping. From the bedroom, a drawer opened, then closed. Footsteps moved across the floor. Same pace, same direction, routine. I picked up the mug again, held it the same way, not by the handle, not near the rim, lower, around the side. My fingers stayed clear of the chip. Without thinking, I took another sip, set it down slightly farther from where it had been a moment before. Another small shift, another ring starting to form. The paper didn't move. The corner stayed lifted, the edge slightly curled. Nothing pressed it down. Nothing flattened it. The counter held both objects without connecting them. From the front of the house, the door opened. A brief rush of cooler air, then closed. The lock clicked. The sound echoed slightly in the hallway. I didn't turn. The closet door closed. The hangers stopped moving. Silence settled in between the sounds. Not complete, just uninterrupted. I rested my hand on the counter, near the mug, near the paper, not touching either, just there. The morning held its shape, Same as before. Coffee, paper, light. Nothing different. Nothing corrected. I stayed there a few seconds longer, then stepped back. The chair was still out. Same angle, same distance from the table. It hadn't moved overnight. No one had pushed it in. No one had pulled it farther out. It stayed where it had been since the night before. I stopped in front of it, closer than I had been any other time. Not reaching, just standing there. The rest of the table looked the same. Plates gone, glasses cleared, the surface empty now, except for the faint rings left behind. Circles overlapping, not matching. I looked at them for a moment, then back at the chair. The seat turned slightly away from the table, not enough to face the room, not enough to align with anything else, just off. I reached for the back of it. My hand stopped a few inches away, hovered, then lowered without touching it. I stepped around it instead, pulled out a different chair, the one at the end of the table. It moved easily. No sound, no resistance. I sat there, not across, not beside, just somewhere else. The table looked different from this angle. Longer, more space between the edges. The empty chair now slightly to the side instead of directly in front. Still visible, still there, just not centered in my view anymore. My hands rested on the table, closer to the edge than usual, further from the center. The wood felt cooler here, less worn. I traced a line along the grain with one finger, then stopped. The marks from the glasses remained, faint, dry now, still visible if you looked long enough. I didn't move them. I didn't cover them. From the living room, the TV came on again. Same volume, same distance. A voice mid-sentence. No beginning, no introduction, just continuing. I leaned back slightly. The chair held steady. No sound. Different from the others. I noticed that. Then let it go. The empty chair remained just outside the center of the table. The space it held unchanged, unfilled. I looked at it once more, then away. My hands stayed where they were, near the edge, not reaching inward, not adjusting anything. The table held its shape. The room held its quiet. Nothing shifted. Nothing asked to be moved. I stayed there a moment longer, then stood. The chair I used slid back without a sound. I left it slightly out. Not as far as the other one, just enough to notice. 2 chairs now, both not aligned, both not returned. I didn't fix either. I walked past them, didn't look back. The bulletin lay flat now, unfolded, not pressed, not held, just open across the counter. The edges no longer matched. One side slightly higher, one corner curled upward without falling back. I didn't touch it. The grid remained visible, names in rows, lines crossing, marks filling most of the page. One space still empty, not hidden, not covered, just there. The mug sat beside it, not centered, not placed, just set down where it had been left. The handle turned away, the chip facing the wall. I reached for it. My hand moved around the side. Not near the rim, not near the chip. Lower, where the surface stayed smooth. I lifted it. There was still a small amount at the bottom, darker, cool. I took a sip, didn't pause, didn't adjust, set it back down near the paper. Not closer, not farther, just down. The base left another ring, crossing the others. No pattern, no alignment. From the hallway, the closet door opened again, the same sound. Hangers sliding across the rod, even, measured. One, then another, then still. I didn't look up. I stood at the counter, the paper in front of me, the mug beside it. Nothing between them, nothing connecting them. The chair behind me remained out. Then another, both slightly off. Neither returned. From the front of the house, the door opened. A brief shift in the air, then closed. The lock clicked. The sound settled quickly into the room. I didn't turn. The coffee machine sat silent now. No hum, no movement, just still. The light from the window spread across the counter, caught the edge of the paper, the curve of the mug, the faint rings left behind. Nothing moved, nothing corrected. I rested my hand on the counter, not on the paper, not on the mug, just beside them. The space between objects stayed the same, unchanged. The closet door closed. The hangers stopped. Silence returned to the hallway. Not complete, just steady. The bulletin stayed open, the blank line still untouched. I didn't reach for it. I didn't fold it. I didn't move it back. The chair stayed out. The paper stayed open. The mug stayed where it was. Nothing lined up. The house was quiet. Not empty, still quiet.